Welcome to The Aggressive Life. My name is Brian. It's great to have you with us today. This podcast is all about getting us outside of our comfort zones, getting us outside of just allowing life to happen to us versus making life happen, getting outside of the idea that, well, it'll all work out in the end, right? It'll all just take care of itself. No, it will not take care of itself. In all likelihood, things will get worse. We have to reclaim the word aggression that says, no, I am going to grab my life by the throat. I'm going to take control of things. I'm going to do things. And if they don't work out, they don't work out because they don't always work out. But one thing I've seen again in my life, again and again and again, is it has a higher likelihood of not working out if I don't do something. That's the idea of aggression. Today, we've got a good little guest on the aggression. Little. He's not little. He's not little. He's cute, but he's not little. And of course, it'd be great if one podcast, if I said, well, today we got a real mediocre guest. I don't know if this one's going to work out well or not, but that is not this one. According to Fortune magazine, 9 out of 10 startup businesses will fail. That means you have a higher likelihood of being accepted into an Ivy League school than your small business being a success. That's where mortar comes in. Mortar is the stuff between the bricks that keeps the wall together. And mortar is also the name of an organization started in 2014 by my friend Alan Woods. They've been changing neighborhoods by teaming up with historically marginalized populations to help them both start and maintain their small business ventures. I know some of you already saying, oh my goodness, is this going to be like another woke podcast? Is this going to be another thing on race? No. I think we're going to get into race stuff, but this is not like the woke podcast. This is also not the entrepreneur podcast. You could be a white stay-at-home parent, and I think you're going to get a lot today because I get a lot out of my time with Alan Woods. We meet together with a couple other guys, a few other guys every Thursday, and he brings a lot of life to me. Entrepreneurs are one of those groups of people that have got to be aggressive, right? I mean, they've got to go, and if they're not going, they have zero chance. And this is actually the way it is in all of our lives. We just have a petri dish that brings out those extremes in entrepreneurship like maybe nothing else. To date, 87% of mortar entrepreneurs are people of color. 67% are women of color. 1 in 4 has faced a significant hardship in their life. Alan is one of the founding partners of Mortar. He's going to talk to us about it. He's the executive director. He's received the John F. Baird Entrepreneur Vision Award. He's a highly sought out after public speaker. He's got an amazing knot tied in the top of his head.
That is not in the bio.
That's not in the bio. But hey, it's the aggressive life. It's all about me. It's all about me having fun. Welcome to the aggressive life, Alan Woods.
Thank you.
Would you like to amend anything that I just said before we get into some of my questions?
No, not at all.
So Mortar is a pretty incredible organization. You're, I don't know if anyone told you or not, Alan, but if you're trying to start something to make a living at it, starting something to help people start something who already are behind the 8 ball because of their skin tone or their gender is not necessarily a good idea to strike it rich. How did you start doing this?
It's that. It's understanding that there are circumstances, there are obstacles, there are people who maybe have not had all of the opportunities that I've had, that I wanted to go out and kind of dedicate my life to helping other people kind of get their, move forward in their lives. So I think that when you think of this being an aggressive, situation, like it's one of those things where you have to go after it with tenacity. It's not something that you can, kind of fiddle-faddle around. It's like you're going to do it or you're not going to do it. And there are so many people who want to start businesses and they want to take their passions and their purpose and figure out a way to monetize them, but they just don't know what those next actionable steps are. And, maybe they didn't go to college to do the thing, but, they just need somebody to kind of give them that guidance. And that's what I've, selected to do with my life.
Oftentimes when we discover our calling, it's not like a booming voice comes down from heaven. I think it's three circles that come together, and that intersection point is the calling.
Right.
One is your gifts. Mm-hmm. What are the things that you're able to do really, really well that was just put into you, that you didn't work for, that just is? Maybe you're a communicator or a salesperson or great with numbers. Another one is opportunities, what's there. And then another one is kind of desires. What is it you want? If you find those three things, you can have a job that's where all three of those areas exist. That's a powerful one. I'm curious about the desires. The book of Psalms says God will give you the desires of your heart. Mm-hmm. And part of what is included there is, I just feel something.
Yeah.
I want something. I'm wondering for you, is there an emotional vignette for you as it relates to entrepreneurship and the underserved folks or the folks who are behind the eight ball? Was there a moment or a person where you felt something, where you just went, oh gosh, this is just not right. I've got to do something about this?
What that is often called like that moment of obligation. It's like the moment in a movie where the superhero finally puts on the cape and it's like, okay, I have to do something right now. And I think that for us, it was recognizing that in one particular neighborhood in Over the Rhine, which is a neighborhood here in Cincinnati, there were a lot of new businesses coming to the area. There's a lot of diversity in the neighborhood. When you walk around, you see a lot of different people from different socioeconomic backgrounds, different complexions, different lifestyles. But then when you walk into the businesses, all of that kind of disappeared. And that diversity vanished as you walk through the doors when you start thinking about who owns the businesses that were coming into the neighborhood. And what we recognized is that though there are some great restaurants in the neighborhood and some, excellent highlights that are happening with bars and parks and all of the things, there are people who live in this neighborhood who've been here for decades who are just as talented, can outcook probably half of the other restaurants that are there, but they just haven't had the person to advocate for them, or they haven't had the network, or they haven't had the capital, or they just didn't know what to do next and how to turn that gift into, and that desire into something that they could actually pursue and monetize. And I think that was that moment of obligation for us was, recognizing that we wanted people to be a part of the revitalization of their neighborhood.
So was there a person, you saw this person and you saw them hurting, or you saw their potential, and did your heart go, oh gosh, that person there?
That didn't happen.
Huh,
like
interesting.
For me, my life, based on who I am, it has always, like, being creative has always been really easy for me. So for some people, math comes really easy. I am not that guy. But being creative and looking at problem solving in a different way has always come easily for me. So, when I started my journey as an entrepreneur, I started as a kid with a camera, who wanted to be a photographer. And then that snowballed into graphic design. Then I went back to school to do design. And then I started helping small businesses become better with their branding. And so for me, this is an opportunity selfishly for me to take all of my passions, all of the things that I care about, and kind of build my dream job and solve another problem at the same time. So there wasn't a one person. It was recognizing that there are challenges and there are people who are even less privileged than me, because there's a level of privilege that comes from being a kid who tells his parents, hey, I'm into photography, and then your parents actually going out and buying you a camera and then putting you in weekend classes and then taking you to museums so that you can, be surrounded by the thing that you're passionate about. When I figured out that this could be something that allowed me to bring all of my gifts and put them on one table and utilize them together. I mean, we're doing film with our participants that come through the program. I just did a photo series with a lot of our women entrepreneurs for Women's History Month. I do a lot of writing for, it's just a lot of opportunities to use my gifts.
You mentioned you were privileged. What's the difference between someone who's privileged and not? And I'm not talking here about, white privilege. I'm just going, what would make somebody, you said you're privileged. Why would you say you were privileged where other people you knew were not? What's some of the marks of that?
I mean, I think it does kind of connect to white privilege in the sense of there are certain things that come from who you are or who you are around. And so for me, though it wasn't white privilege, it was
Because you are very black.
I am very black.
Yeah, very.
Very extra
you are black all day.
Especially
you are black
today,
all day.
Today I'm super black. I got my African necklace on. Like, I'm ready to go. I think that it's really important to acknowledge that, every person of color doesn't come from a place of lack. And I think that that's kind of the narrative, is that, there's a place of lack. When I say privilege, there are things and people around me that poured into me. And I didn't do anything to earn it. I didn't do anything to deserve it. It's a level of privilege. It's a level of blessing that I acknowledge now as an adult that maybe at the time I didn't realize it, because I had friends who had Jordans and my parents wouldn't buy me any, so it's like, so I think that when I say privilege, I'm saying I'm coming from a place where I didn't have any lack. I mean, in the sense of I was never starving. I was never, in a home where our lights were turned off and things like that. But I do empathize with people who that is their story, and I want to challenge them and help them get to that next place.
Well, just the fact that you had two parents that are together.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's a starting point.
The statistics are very, very clear that if you're going to grow up in a single parent home, you are much more likely to be in poverty than somebody who isn't.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be discouraging to our listeners who are single parents. Yeah. Not at all. Doesn't mean it's a guarantee. Doesn't mean it's going to happen. It's just very clear you have an advantage.
It's basic math, honestly. I mean, even if you are working a low-wage job, if you have two people in a home that are both working low-wage jobs, you have twice as much money, even though it's not a lot of money, but you're bringing two incomes into one home. So whether you have a roommate or whoever, you're able to divide up some of those finances. So you kind of have this ability to kind of have this cooperative economics built in if you have a two-parent household. And you have the additional support. Maybe you're not paying for a sitter if you have one parent who's staying at home, because sometimes both parents working, sometimes one of the parents is working just to pay for the kids to be able to go somewhere. When you start to think about what they're paying for nannies or for daycare or whatever, you're spending so much doing that. So
it's not just those financial realities, right, but men and women do bring different insights and perspectives to the playing field. 100%. And when you got a mom and a dad, you're doubling your wisdom.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, 67% of all of the people that MORTAR serves are women of color.
Yeah.
The vast majority are women.
Yeah.
Tell us why women in entrepreneurship is so critical and important.
When we think of, marginalized communities, women have always been marginalized in the United States. Even through women's suffrage and all of those things, there were women who have always been marginalized. My mom, I was talking to my mom the other day, and she does real estate, and she was talking about, in the 40s, women couldn't buy their own homes, and in the 70s, they couldn't even get their own credit card without a cosigner from a man. And so there have always been those challenges, and I think that we're in a really pivotal place right now where women are being empowered, and they're stepping up into a whole new place. And across the country, the fastest growing number of new entrepreneurs are Black women.
My mother was valedictorian at her college, Baldwin Wallace College, which is a really good school in Cleveland. And, she talks about it. There's some appropriate bitterness with her. As valedictorian, her coming out, she had 3 opportunities. Nurse, work at a church, or be a
secretary.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
That was it. And, valedictorian, and,
yeah.
and she worked at a church. She was an organist at church, did Christian education, stuff like that at the church. But yeah, it wasn't too long ago that your sex parts defined purely what your possibilities were in the future.
And they still do. I mean, in the realms of equal pay, I mean, I just don't understand why that is still a thing. Why a woman sitting right next to a man doing the exact same job and possibly even better than that man is getting paid less. And so, we do what we can to be as empowering to women as possible, to get out of the way when we need to get out of the way, to open the door when we need to open the door. And I think that that's important.
I'm wondering if here domestically in the United States, it's the same learnings with your organization it is with organizations that I've worked with that are overseas. They're trying to kick a dent in poverty. They are actually targeting women to help because women stay in the community and build the community where the men don't. Like there seems like in poverty there's an evaporation of men. Where are the men in the communities where there's poverty? What's your thoughts on this?
This podcast could be really, really long. There are a lot of men that maybe grew up in a home that had a lack of a male presence, and so there are a lot of men by age that have not learned how to be men by character. They have started to kind of disappear and maybe duplicate some of the things that they saw when they were children. There's systems in play. I mean, like when we talk about sentencing, and these are not things that I'm making up, or I mean, there's statistics on sentencing for crimes, equal crimes, but depending on who you are and where you're from, how you're in front of a judge, and you might get leniency if you're a white man that did the exact same thing as a black man, or when you think back to the war on drugs,
that's a statistical fact.
Yeah,
that's a statistical fact.
Definitely,
that's been studied many times.
Absolutely, and so there are sometimes those reasons that men become absent, but I think a lot of it, you can't just blame everything on systems. There are just some men that are immature who have never actually become real men. And they are not taking advantage of the opportunities. They're not taking care of their families. And they're honestly just really selfish. And, it creates a dynamic where women have had to figure out how to do it because they don't have the luxury of walking away from children, in the way that men have done for forever. A woman will give birth to a kid and the man could literally leave the hospital or never show up at the hospital and go and live his life. And the woman has always said, I have to do what I have to do to take care of my family. And I think that these new entrepreneurs are doing that and taking it to a different level.
So give us a test case study of one of your female clients. What does life look like, and how do they start a business, and how does it make an impact? Just pick one. Like how old they are, what their business is, and what it looks like for how they got to schedule out their days.
So the first person who popped in my head is actually Erica Gray. She's married, but she doesn't have any children. But she is a grinder. She is always making sure that she takes her business to another level, and she's one of the people that, when I'm thinking about other people who work like I work, she is one of those people. So she used to have a boutique in Covington, Kentucky. It started to change. She was doing like vintage clothing. Then she was like, I'm really into candles. I wish that I could, get into creating my own candles. And she started a company called District 78 where she creates her own like soy-based candles. And then she took it another level, and now she does plants, as well. So she calls her company District 78 a mood company. She has a store actually with 3 other MORTAR alumni. It's on Short Vine in the Clifton area, and it's called Pause, which is just designed to tell people to take a pause in your day to focus on yourself. So you can go in there and get plants or candles or cold pressed juice. You can even get a massage. I mean, like, there's just so much that you can kind of walk into this one space, and that kind of speaks again to cooperative economics. Instead of one entrepreneur trying to carve out one space all by themselves, 4 entrepreneurs came together and said, what would happen if we split this, so that, it increases our profit margin because we have less overhead because we're sharing the rent and all the utilities. And it just creates a whole different dynamic for, especially in environments of COVID. They literally opened on Valentine's Day 2020, like 1 month before the stay-at-home order. And they had a great year last year because they were doing it together. And they've all said that if they were in that space by themselves, it wouldn't have happened. So, having Erica kind of lead and be able to show other entrepreneurs who maybe haven't had a space, how to take care of a space and how to, just continue to grow your business. She's a mentor at the same time. So it gives her an opportunity to continue to grow and to continue to pour into other people. And I think that that's one of the important parts of what you do, what I do. It's as we grow, we're not just growing for the sake of our growth. We're taking some of the growth that we have and we're pouring into other people.
I'm curious how COVID has affected your clients. And I'm actually really interested to hear your response because I honestly am not sure what it's going to be. We had a guy recently on the podcast, John Acuff, a very, very funny guy. He wrote a book called Stuff White People Like. bunch of interesting things. And we were talking. He said,
was mayonnaise on the list?
Mayonnaise? I'm not sure.
Man. I'm just wondering.
I'm not a mayonnaise guy.
Okay.
Mustard all the way. But it was stuff like white people like live animals in church. That's what white people like moleskin notebooks. That was another one. Actually, no, it wasn't what white people like. It was what Christians like. Yeah, stuff Christians like. Yeah, stuff Christians like.
Okay.
I think he took it off the book called White People. Anyway, we got in this whole thing. He said, "You know what I don't like about whole Christian culture?" He said, "I don't like that when I come in, the worship leader always assumes I've had a crappy week. The worship leader always goes, it's been tough. He's always got his skinny jeans on and all this stuff. He's going, it's been a hard week. Let's just go to God with all of our difficult things." And he says, I'm sitting there going, I didn't have a bad week.
Right.
I had a great week.
Yeah.
I would just one time like to hear worship leader say, "Hey man, we all nailed it this week.
Yeah.
So let's thank God for that." You told me in one of our groups, you're like, I'm tired of hearing all the negative about COVID, because you had like the greatest year of your life last year. Tell us why. How?
Yeah, I mean, as a company, MORTAR, we also, obviously went through the same transitions that a lot of other organizations went through. We had to furlough some employees. We had to make some adjustments. But I think that it gave us time to think. It gave us time to reflect on what's working, what's not, what should we be doing, how do we adjust? And, it is often difficult to be the person who's in a room when everybody's like, yeah, all the businesses are struggling and everything's terrible. And you're just sitting there like, well, ours was kind of good, and then you don't want to come across as if you have a lack of empathy for the businesses who are struggling, because that just wasn't our story last year. There were a lot of businesses that, I think the initial thought was 25% of all businesses are going to go out of business due to COVID. And then when you look at specifically the Black community, that number skyrocketed to an estimate of 40%. And for us, we didn't have any of our alumni that were in business when COVID started. None of them went out of business.
Wow.
We actually had like 5 of them do grand openings during COVID. So, there's a lot of things that are kind of built into that. It's not just a thing that we can take credit for. We just have some people who have, some exceptional skills and tenacity to kind of push forward in spite of the challenges that are happening.
So your businesses that you service survived or grew.
Yeah.
The organization you lead had a banner year. You told me, man, it was a great year for me. I bought my first brand new truck.
Yeah.
You got a bunch of other. So as I ask you this, just want to have a baseline for all of us to hear. I don't know what you're going to say. It's just good to hear. We're not talking about Captain Doom and Gloom here. You're one of the first people I heard admit publicly, I'm having a great year. Because it's kind of like we're all going, oh yeah, 2020. But not everyone did. So anyway, 2020 was a very, very difficult year, tense year on all levels for cultural indicators. Mm-hmm. How about for new businesses? How about for the people in your neighborhoods?
Yeah.
What did it look like that I might not be aware of in my predominantly white neighborhood? Well, no, not predominantly. My white neighborhood. It's not predominant. It is white.
So I think that one of the things that people don't take into account is ingenuity. That has to be a part of being an entrepreneur. If you want to make it, you have to figure it out. And that's with or without a pandemic. Like, if something happens, you have to figure out how to make the adjustment before it completely wipes you out. It's the same as when you drive. When you're driving and you're in your lane and you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, you could be doing everything right. But if some idiot swerves into your lane, you have to be ready to make the decisions that you have to make to preserve your life. And it's the same thing in business. You have to be able to preserve your business. And I think that a lot of times people are on autopilot and they're not as attentive to their business. And sometimes that's when something happens and you're not ready for it. So we are often encouraging our participants to have plan B's and C's when everything is going perfectly fine so that they can prepare and be ready in case something else happens. And I think that that's one of the encouraging things of having a group like ours around to kind of be that mentor and kind of be that advocate for our participants, because things can happen at a moment's notice. And if you don't know what to do or you don't know who to ask, it can be a challenge and you're kind of there by yourself. And I think that a lot of the businesses that weren't able to survive through COVID weren't able to make those adjustments quickly.
40% of minority-owned businesses failed?
That was the expectation.
That was the expectation.
Yeah, and I'm not sure what the current number is, but what I do know is that there have actually been a lot of people across the nation of all different, diverse, backgrounds that have started businesses during COVID, whether it is a business that serves a new need or if it's a business that, comes from necessity or someone gets laid off or, furloughed and they're like, you know what, now is the time. I'm sitting at home, I'm trying to, keep my sanity. And maybe now's the time that I start to pursue this thing that I always have wanted to do, but didn't have the time or didn't have the reason or just everything didn't line up. And I think a lot of people have looked at COVID as a time to kind of start to pursue some of the things that they didn't pursue in the past.
Hey, let's take a quick break here for a couple things. One, how about doing a brother a solid? Tell people you listen to this and you like it. How about leaving me a review and rating? Seriously, guys, it would be, and ladies, it would be really helpful if you gave us a review because it would encourage more people to get in touch with the podcast. The more people who are getting aggressive, the better all of our lives are going to be because the better the world is going to do. So do that right now, please. Also, I've had a new devotional out. It's called Move. It was self-published, and a traditional publisher has picked it up. It's going to have a nationwide release Tuesday, May 18th. We've added 22% new content to this devotional. So even if you had the original, there's new stuff in there. We've got a week's worth of special podcast content planned to celebrate the release. And I'm excited about this book and this content because these are the things that guys wrestle with and need to hear from. So you can pre-order your copy on Amazon now, and you'll be ready for May 18th. So back to the show. You have a powerful story that includes a Woolworth store, Civil Rights Museum, and the opening of MORTAR. Can you give us a bird's eye view of that?
Yeah. A couple years ago in Cincinnati, we were putting together a pop-up shop in a space, and we didn't know the history of this building that we were working in. It was just it used to be like a dollar store before us, so we were just kind of cleaning it up and just getting an understanding that, there were things happening around us that, I think all things kind of connect in some fashion. And I went on vacation with my wife for a wedding, and we went to North Carolina, and we actually went to the site of the first sit-in, for the civil rights movement. And, it did something to me just to know that these were, a couple kids, it's like four guys basically who started this whole thing that just blew up and expanded across the South and across the country, and then ultimately ended up to desegregation of restaurants and, the counters and things like that. And so when I got back to Cincinnati and continued to work on this space, there was an older gentleman who came into the building, and he was asking what we were doing in the space, and he let us know that this was the space where he had met his wife. So he was always kind of kept his eye on the space, and he let us know that it had been a Woolworths, store, and it was just kind of like this connection point of the work that MORTAR was doing, and that we were three guys who just had this journey of, hey, let's do something that's going to have an impact that's bigger than us.
Because Woolworths was the place of who gets to sit at the counter and who doesn't.
Exactly. And then having that connection point of, to other people who just had this desire to change things, and understanding that we were ultimately doing the same thing several generations later, and that we would have an impact that was bigger than us, because they never knew when they left their college that day, that they were going to change the entire country, and there took some tenacity. It took some bravery. It took some honor and some integrity to sit there and kind of take all of the things that came with that. And so for us, it was just an amazing kind of connection point for us to know that, this one thing that we wanted to start in one neighborhood in Cincinnati is now in 6 neighborhoods in Cincinnati, and then in 6 additional cities outside of Cincinnati. And we never planned on it being bigger than one neighborhood. And so sometimes it's about just getting up and following your intuition and your heart, and just saying, like, I think I'm going to do this thing, and I don't know what's going to happen. I think a lot of times I'm not a planner. I'm super spontaneous. I think a lot of times we try to plan our lives and everything has to fit this roadmap, and we're going to miss out on the things that really would have made the difference because we didn't have that spontaneity.
But that's the point of aggression, right?
Yeah.
The point of aggression is I see something, I'm going to do something.
Yeah.
I thought of this, I'm going to go do this. It's not I'm going to have elaborate plannings and systems, which is fine to have planning and systems, but I meet more and more folks like you and I just seize the day.
Yeah.
Boy, that's an old movie, right? Carpe diem. Seize the day, boys. You ever see that old movie?
I have no idea.
Carpe diem.
But it sounds interesting.
Make your life count for something. It's an old
Is this
Robin
an
Williams
ASMR podcast.
No, it's an old Carpe Diem movie, but Robin Williams, and he's working with some privileged kids who are looking at this.
Oh wait, is that Dead Poet Society?
Yeah, that's a Dead Poet Society.
I have seen that.
And they're looking at all these dead people, these old black and white photos,
Yeah.
and one day they're just like you, having all kind of dreams, but they ended up just like you, worm food.
Yeah.
You can hear their voices calling out, lean in, boys. Lean in, boy. Hear what they say to you. Seize the day, boys. Remember that now? Come on. You're starting to cry right now, aren't you?
No, I'm not. I was thinking I do need to rewatch it, but then I was also wondering if you have a copy of the script at home because you know a lot about it.
No, I don't have a copy of the script. That's just one of my favorite scenes in any movie. But anyway, to your point, so those folks, I didn't think about it. They just seized the day that day. Yeah. I need to make a stand here that day. I need to be, they didn't use probably this terminology, but I need to be aggressive this day. Yeah. I'm telling you, man, if more of us would get on that plan than any other self-help plan, I'm telling you, your life would change. One of the things I'm so glad I did is you and I were meeting a while ago talking about MORTAR, and I just felt a little prompting from God. Ask this guy if he wants to get in your men's group. So I've been meeting with 6 to 8 guys for a bit, and just asked you, and man, you said yes, and it's been great being with you in that environment. I'm just really thankful that the God brought that thought past my mind, that I said yes and asked, and then you did it. It's been cool. I wonder how many other things like that I might have ignored, but my life isn't the better because of it. But my life is the better because of you and saying yes that day. I appreciate you, brother.
And I appreciate you. I mean, that was one of the things that you wouldn't have known, but that was something I was longing for. I had even had conversations with my wife. I have several siblings that I'm not connected to that, I was just like, why do I not have these relationships with men, like in my life? And I have a couple, guy friends, but it wasn't like some of those relationships are relationships that, you are always the poorer and no one ever is like reciprocating that. And I was really telling her, I'm looking for relationships that I am not the only one who has to pour, where I'm not always the mentor, but I can learn from other people and sometimes be the mentee. And I think that the majority of my relationships before connecting with you was I was always the mentor, and I was looking for something where I could learn from other people and have people kind of pour into me as well as me pouring into them. So it's been great, and it's something that, I think that more men should have, more women should have, and married couples. I'm a huge advocate for marriage. My wife and I have a podcast as well that's kind of dormant now because of other priorities in COVID, and we just kind of took a break. But I think that it's really important to kind of have those people around you that are where you want to go, and who can kind of support you in getting to that place. So, if you want to be an entrepreneur, surround yourself with entrepreneurs. If you want to be a singer, surround yourself with singers and musicians, and you'll learn from each other. And that part will kind of help you get there.
Well, you certainly haven't only been a receiver. You've also been a pourer. I've reflected frequently. In fact, I just quoted you yesterday. We were talking about how there is a narrative in our country that you have to believe or else you are canceled. Mm-hmm. There is a certain set of values that you need to have. It's almost like literal thought police is going around that, and we're actually eliminating dissenting points of view. I'm reading a book right now on transgender, which is looking at just stuff we don't hear about. Yeah. And it got banned from Amazon.
Oh, wow.
Just banned. So I had to go somewhere to find it. And all the books of people who were gay, who are right now not gay, this is their words, they've all been eliminated from Amazon. Wow. And there's just, and you can agree or disagree with whatever those books are, but the point was, and what you said to me was, our culture is squashing minority opinions. Mm-hmm. I don't mean skin minority, I mean just minority. And you said, well, that's just the way it's always been in our culture. And you as a black man, you've seen that. You want to blow that out a little bit more?
Yeah, I think that, when you think back to the conversation of going back to the counter, I mean, that is unpopular opinion that you should be able to grab a cup of coffee at the same place as someone else that doesn't look like you. For you to have that thought, could lead to your death. Ultimately was terrorism. I mean, like, we're in 2021. This is the 100-year commemoration of the race massacre in Tulsa, Oklahoma, on Black Wall Street, where it was a thriving economy of black doctors, lawyers, entrepreneurs, and that, for a lot of people, was a threat to what it meant to be an American in the patriot sense and in the sense of a lot of other narratives that we still constantly hear. I think that there are still people who are threatened by the fact that
people were killed.
Yeah.
And that wasn't even reported on. You couldn't even know about it.
No.
In fact, I didn't even learn about that until about 2 years ago.
Yeah, it was very hidden. It was, 300 people died, all of the businesses, churches, everything burned down. There were clear messages and signals sent to people that this is what happens when you don't, quote unquote, stay in your place. Because the place for black people in America is not a state of prominence. There were a lot of people in Oklahoma who were struggling, who were white men, and white families right around the corner who were like, who are these people to dare to be thriving? When you think of that, that was a minority opinion, that we can thrive and we can figure this out and we can build our own economies and we can take care of ourselves. One of the things we have to remember is that just because it's an unpopular opinion doesn't mean that you have to, squash it. You don't even have to agree. It is what it is. Like, we all have our own opinions, but you don't have to squash it because it's something that, is different than how you were raised or brought up.
But the dominant culture always has the microphone. Mm-hmm. The dominant culture always has the narrative. Yep. And if you happen to be someone like me or you who has a Christian worldview, we are not in the dominant culture anymore. Not at all.
We would like to believe it, but it's, the fact is that we come from a place where, I mean, even inherently in the country, that, religion is, well, Christianity, not even religion, but Christianity is one of the foundational, principles of government. Even though there's like a separation of church and state, essentially, but, Christianity is a foundation of government. And so, we, I think as a country, have tried to hold on to Christianity as the only way. But not recognizing that if you grew up in the house next door, you may have had an entirely different religion and, thought process. And because you grew up in your house, now everybody who's outside of your house is wrong and you have to dispute what they say. And so I think just changing that worldview and understanding that everybody is not going to think and believe like you do Jesus didn't ask us to agree with everybody. He just told us to love everybody.
Amen. I think that's interesting that I am struggling with how to be in the minority. A mutual friend of ours, Chuck Mingo, he sent me this article. I'm laughing. He was laughing when he told me about it. I just think it's a crazy, crazy illustration. It was a black guy who likened COVID ending to having to put his bee suit back on to go back into culture. He said, he has this article and he says, as a black man, when I go into culture, I've got to put my bee suit on because there is a bunch of bees. And he says, and he's a beekeeper. He says, most of the bees that are buzzing around, they're never going to hurt you.
Right.
It's okay. There's okay. But there's a couple that are going to really hurt you and sting you, and there's a couple others that actually could kill you. It's a vast, vast majority, but to go into culture as a black man, he says, it's like when I'm going around my bees, I've got to put my bee suit on, and what COVID-19 did for me is I didn't have to interact with it.
Yeah.
I could stay home, and he says, I've learned that I can actually buy honey and not have to go around all those people who are going to sting me.
Yeah. Then there's that.
Yeah.
Then there's that. There's always been a desire for self-preservation and protection. And I think that in general, even the conversation about, the books that you were searching for, we need to get to a place where people can coexist without agreement. If I don't have the same thoughts as you, I don't have to feel like I'm going to get stung because I just want to live my life in a free way that doesn't impose on your freedoms.
Amen.
And I think that's the difference. As long as I'm living in a free way that's not imposing on someone else's freedoms, and it's not hurting other people or causing, whatever pain, I think that we need to get to the point where, we are protective of other people. There are lots of people who don't have to put on their beekeeper suits and they're walking around with immunity and they're like, I'm good, But what would happen if they were to start to advocate for the people who don't have the same protections, and really start to, like even thinking about the Asian community right now and a lot of the things that, are not new. What would happen if more people said sooner that this is not okay, and it shouldn't have to be. It's not the burden of the Asian community to carry. It's not the burden of the black community to we didn't create the racist politics and systems, but then we're often being tasked with dismantling racism. And it's like, we didn't make this. So, yeah.
Well, it's also complicated because when people who look like me, white Christians, had the microphone and controlled the narrative, we didn't do a very good job of valuing people who are different than us, allowing dissenting opinions and views to be out there, allowing people to follow a different path than we would personally follow. We didn't do a very good job of that, and we should have, because we're the people of grace. Our spirituality is founded on grace, giving second chances, allowing someone to have something slide, allowing somebody else to have a different opinion. That's kind of part of the foundational things of our faith, because God lets things slide with us all the time, all the time,
without writing us off.
Right. And as I told a friend of mine who's a gay activist, I said, it's really difficult here, because now that you've got the microphone, now that you're in the majority, and not that most people are gay, but the statistics are very, very clear that view of sexuality is the one that's most approved of, or at least people say it is. It'll be interesting if you treat us better than we treated you, and I don't have a high expectation of that because there's not a foundation of grace and forgiveness in any movement outside of Jesus, So it's odd times we're in. I'm getting deep and dark here right now, so sorry for that. Hey, are you ready for the lightning round, Alan Woods? Are you ready?
Round. Yes.
All right. I ask you something, and you give me a very, very quick 1-2 sentence answer. Are you ready?
Boom. Let's do it.
Business idea you wish you would have thought of?
The iPhone.
Hero from business or history you would most like to have lunch with, and you can't say Jesus?
Malcolm X after he returned from Mecca.
All right.
Yeah, let's dig in.
It's problems. Someone sometimes gets an answer, and I'm like, okay. I know Malcolm X.
Yeah.
I have no idea what you're talking about with Mecca. So go ahead, tell me.
So when Malcolm went to Mecca, he came into the understanding that there were a lot of Muslims that were not black. And he worshiped alongside kind of the same conversation we're having right now. He worshiped next to white Muslims and Arabic Muslims and black Muslims, and really came into this deeper understanding of what the religion was really about versus what he had learned kind of previously, and had just a different world perspective, and was coming back to America from a place of peace where he really wanted to build with other communities versus kind of antagonizing or to get revenge, on some of the things that had been done, and never really had that opportunity to do that, because shortly thereafter he was assassinated. And so, I think that he fundamentally changed who he was because of that trip to Mecca. And I would love to sit down with him and talk about what he would have perceived as what was next.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Key to surviving your first year as a small business.
Hennessy. No. Sleep. Because the people will try to tell you that, there's the narrative that entrepreneurs, we'll sleep when we're dead. But no, it's like you need that healthy level of rest to recuperate, because when you show up the next day and you're well rested, you're thinking on a different level and you're ready to kind of accomplish more.
Way to know if my business idea is a good idea.
Talk to the potential customers who are not your family and friends who would actually spend money with you, and find out, what they are looking for, and if it's solving a problem, what is the problem that it solves, and for how long.
Accomplishment you're most proud of.
Family, just knowing that I'm doing my best to be a great husband and father. And, I'm really pleased and proud of the young women that my daughters have grown into. My girls they're gonna make some really big changes in this world, and I'm excited to see it.
Best piece of advice you've ever gotten?
Go. Like, don't wait for everything to be perfect. Just go and, make the adjustments as you need to.
Most aggressive move you've made as a husband?
Ooh, moving to Cincinnati. My wife got a job here in Cincinnati. We're both born and raised in Indianapolis, and she got a job here, and being a supportive husband was aggressive. I mean, in the sense of, I could have said, well, I don't want to leave and I don't want to follow my wife to another city, so she can do her thing. Because I had no idea what I was going to do once I got here. So I think supporting my wife and saying, let's go, we're a team, we'll make it happen.
Most aggressive move you've ever made at MORTAR?
Oh, that's hard. I make aggressive moves every day. We just moved into a new building that we hope to be able to purchase at some point. And it's an amazing space, and we are building out a studio in that space so we can continue to do photography, video, podcasts, and really kind of control our narrative.
Taking new ground always sounds sexy.
Yeah.
But it never feels sexy, right? Because it's always something I'm not sure how it's going to happen, and the possibility of failure is very, very high.
Yeah. It felt right. Yeah.
Anything you want to talk about that I haven't asked you?
No, that's a nice shirt, though. It brings out your eyes.
That's what my wife says.
I'm an observer. See, I'm a photographer. Man. I notice everything.
I feel so loved right now. I can't wait to tell Liv that. Well, dude, people are going to want to follow up with you and your stuff and MORTAR. If someone wants to follow up, how can they find you?
I try to make everything easy so it's the same everywhere. If you're looking for me personally, everything is at Just Call Me Allen, ALLEN. If you're looking for MORTAR, everything is at We Are MORTAR, MORTAR.
Well, there it is, boys and girls. another episode of The Aggressive Life. Take some of Alan's words and actually do them. Don't just listen to them, do them. Have a great week. We'll see you next time on The Aggressive Life. Hey, thanks for listening. For more aggressive living, head over to briantome.com. Get signed up for the mailing list to get regular shots of positive aggression sent straight to your inbox. And while you're there, you can also find articles, podcasts, and books. I'm also active on Instagram. Search Brian Tome. Special thanks to the band judges for the music. Aggressive Life with Brian Tome is a production of Crossroads Church, Cincinnati, Ohio.